She finds a hidden map in her grandmother's cottage that changes her life forever. When Maya returns to her late grandmother's cottage, she expects nothing more than memories and an empty home. But hidden within its walls, she stumbles upon an old map, one that will lead her on a journey she never could have imagined. Where does the map lead? And what secret had her grandmother kept buried all these years? Before we begin, tell us in the comments, if you found a hidden map in an old house, would you follow it? And if you love mysterious and adventurous stories, don't forget to like this video to support the channel. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. The gravel crunched under the tires of Maya's car as she turned onto the familiar winding path leading to Havenmore. The coastal air was sharp, tinged with salt and pine, and the sound of waves crashing against the cliffs reached her ears even through the closed windows. Havenmore was a small village perched precariously at the edge of the world, or so it had always seemed to Maya. It was a place of quiet mornings, restless seas, and the smell of lavender and baking bread that always lingered in her grandmother's cottage. As she parked outside the weathered stone house, Maya sat for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. The garden was overgrown, wildflowers spilling over the cobbled path that once had been neatly maintained. The house looked the same, yet different, like seeing an old friend who had aged in your absence. Her grandmother Edith had lived here her entire life, and now that she was gone, the house felt untethered, adrift. Maya exhaled, gathering her courage, and stepped out of the car. The breeze was cool, tugging at her loose sweater as she approached the front door. She fumbled with the key, its weight unfamiliar in her hand. When the door creaked open, the scent of lavender, faint but unmistakable, greeted her, and a lump rose in her throat. "Hi, Gran," she whispered, as if expecting a reply. The cottage was a time capsule. The same patched armchair stood by the hearth, the knitted blanket draped over it, just as Maya remembered. The shelves overflowed with books, their spines cracked and worn. Above the fireplace hung her grandmother's favorite painting, a stormy seascape that Edith had claimed reminded her of life's turbulence and beauty. Maya set her bag down by the door, suddenly overwhelmed. She hadn't been back in years. The guilt of her absence gnawed at her, mingling with a bittersweet ache. Her grandmother had always been her champion, her unwavering supporter when the world seemed too loud and her dreams felt too fragile. "You've got it in you," Edith would say, her voice strong yet gentle. "The world needs your art, my girl. Never let anyone tell you otherwise." But life had a way of wearing people down. Maya had let the pressures of deadlines and expectations smother her creativity. Her art had become a job, not a joy, and somewhere along the way she had lost the vibrant part of herself that her grandmother had always believed in. Wandering through the house, she found herself in the small sunlit studio at the back. This was where Edith had painted, her easel still standing by the window that overlooked the sea. The table was cluttered with brushes and tubes of paint, dried flecks of color marking the wood like a mosaic. Maya traced a finger over the surface, her chest tightening. As she turned to leave, something caught her eye. A small package wrapped in brown paper sitting on the windowsill. Her name was written on it in her grandmother's neat, looping handwriting. Maya's heart skipped a beat. She picked up the package, its weight unfamiliar and oddly significant. She carried it to the kitchen, where the light was better, and sat down at the table. For a long moment she simply stared at it, her mind racing with possibilities. Why had her grandmother left this for her? And why hadn't anyone mentioned it? Her fingers hovered over the string tying the package shut, but she hesitated. It felt like opening it would set something in motion, something she wasn't sure she was ready for. Instead, she placed it back on the table, pushing it slightly away as if distance would dampen its pull. Needing a distraction, Maya stepped outside into the garden. The overgrown plants brushed against her jeans as she walked toward the cliff's edge. The view was breathtaking, the sea stretching endlessly, its surface glinting in the fading sunlight. This had always been her sanctuary as a child, a place to think, to dream, to escape. She closed her eyes and let the wind whip through her hair, carrying with it the scent of the ocean. "Maya, the sea is like life," her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. sometimes calm, sometimes wild. But it's always moving, always changing. The memory brought a small smile to her lips. Edith had a way of weaving wisdom into everyday moments, turning simple observations into life lessons. When she finally returned to the kitchen, the package seemed to call to her. She couldn't avoid it any longer. Sitting down, she untied the string with trembling fingers and peeled back the paper. Inside was a faded envelope and something wrapped in a soft cloth. She unfolded the cloth carefully to reveal a small leather-bound book. The cover was worn, the edges scuffed, but the craftsmanship was exquisite. Opening the book, Maya found pages of intricate drawings, maps, landscapes, and cryptic symbols, each one more fascinating than the last. Tucked between the pages was a photograph. She held it up, squinting to make out the details. It was a picture of her grandmother as a young woman, standing in front of a grand oak tree. She looked vibrant, full of life, her smile radiating warmth. In her hands, she held a rolled-up scroll, and the sparkle in her eyes suggested a secret only she knew. Maya's pulse quickened as she flipped through the book again. Scribbled in the margins were notes in her grandmother's handwriting. Follow the light, seek the bridge, and the heart will guide you. What is this, Gran? Maya whispered, her voice thick with emotion. It felt like her grandmother was speaking to her from beyond, urging her toward something she couldn't yet understand. She opened the envelope next, revealing a handwritten letter. The first line made her breath catch. My dearest Maya, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer there to guide you in person. But my love, there's something I need you to see. Something I've waited my whole life to share with you. This journey is yours to take, and through it, I hope you'll find the spark you've been searching for. The letter ended with a set of coordinates and one final note. Begin at the cliff's edge where the sea meets the sky. Maya stared at the letter, her heart pounding. This wasn't just a keepsake, it was an invitation. Her grandmother had left her a puzzle, a journey, perhaps even a second chance. As the weight of the moment settled over her, she felt something she hadn't felt in years, a flicker of excitement, of possibility. She stood, clutching the book and letter to her chest, and glanced out the window toward the cliffs. Whatever this was, it was calling to her. And for the first time in a long while, Maya felt ready to answer. The wind was stronger near the cliff's edge the next morning, tugging at Maya's jacket as she clutched the map in one hand and the letter in the other. The coordinates her grandmother had left were clear, yet standing here, facing the endless expanse of the ocean, Maya felt small and uncertain. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. Begin at the cliff's edge, where the sea meets the sky. She unfolded the map again, tracing her finger along its delicate lines. Unlike any map she'd seen before, this one wasn't geographical in the conventional sense. Instead, it was filled with swirling patterns, symbols, and phrases written in her grandmother's handwriting. One particular phrase stood out, marked near the center of the map. The heart knows the way. What does that even mean? Maya muttered, her voice swallowed by the roar of the waves. She sighed, folding the map back into her jacket pocket. If Edith had left this for her, there had to be a purpose. A reason why Maya was the one chosen to follow this trail. The coordinates, when entered into her phone, pointed to a location a few miles down the coast. A walking path wound its way through the dense pines along the cliffs, and with nothing but the letter and map as her guide, Maya decided to trust the journey. She set off, her boots crunching against the gravel path. As she walked, the forest seemed to close in around her, the tall trees creating a canopy that blocked out the morning sun. The air was damp and cool, carrying the earthy scent of moss and fallen leaves. Her mind wandered as her feet carried her forward, memories of her grandmother bubbling to the surface. Edith had always been a seeker, a believer in the unseen. Maya remembered long afternoons spent in the garden, where Edith would tell her stories about the hidden connections in the world. There's magic all around us, she'd say, if only we're brave enough to look for it. At the time, Maya had thought of those words as whimsical musings, comforting but not grounded in reality. Now, with the map in her pocket and the weight of Edith's letter pressing against her chest, she wondered if perhaps her grandmother had been telling the truth all along. path eventually opened up to a small clearing, where the cliffs jutted out dramatically over the ocean. The coordinates on her phone indicated she was in the right spot. Maya scanned the area, her eyes drawn to an old oak tree standing near the edge of the cliff. It was gnarled and weathered, its branches reaching out like ancient arms. She approached it cautiously, her heart pounding. At its base, she noticed a small stone cairn, a deliberate stack of smooth rocks. Kneeling, she carefully removed the top stone, revealing a small weathered tin box hidden beneath. Her breath caught as she opened the box. Inside was another note, written in Edith's familiar handwriting. Maya, you've taken the first step. The journey isn't always clear, but the heart always guides. Look to the horizon. What do you see? Maya frowned, glancing toward the horizon as instructed. The ocean stretched endlessly, the waves glittering under the midday sun. Then, just as she was about to dismiss the note as cryptic, her eyes caught something, a faint glimmer, almost imperceptible, near a distant outcropping of rocks. It was subtle, but the longer she stared, the more certain she became. There was something there, hidden in plain sight. The trek to the outcropping was harder than she'd expected. The rocky terrain was uneven, and the salty spray of the ocean made everything slick. Maya moved cautiously, her muscles straining as she climbed over boulders and navigated narrow ledges. By the time she reached the glimmering object, her hands were scraped and her legs ached, but the sight before her made her forget all of it. Nestled between two large rocks was a metal object that looked ancient, weathered by time and the elements. It was a small chest, its surface etched with intricate designs, waves, stars, and what looked like a compass rose. Maya's fingers trembled as she touched it, the metal cool against her skin. With some effort, she pried it open. Inside was a single item, a key. It was ornate, with a handle shaped like a heart and tiny symbols carved along its shaft. Beneath it was another folded piece of paper. She unfolded it carefully, her eyes scanning the words. Every door has a key, and every key a purpose. The place you seek is where your roots first grew. Trust the journey. Maya sat back on her heels, clutching the key. Her roots? She thought of Havenmore, of the cottage and its memories. Could the note be referring to her grandmother's house? Or was it something else? The cryptic nature of Edith's clues frustrated her. But a part of Maya felt invigorated, alive in a way she hadn't been in years. This wasn't just a scavenger hunt, it was a call to reconnect, to rediscover something she'd lost. Back at the cottage, the key burned a hole in Maya's pocket as she searched the house for answers. She scoured the bookshelves, rifled through old drawers, and even inspected the floorboards for hidden compartments. Nothing seemed to match the key's intricate design. Finally, exhausted, she slumped into her grandmother's favorite armchair. The sun had dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows across the room. The painting above the fireplace, the stormy seascape Edith had cherished, caught her eye. Maya frowned, standing to get a closer look. The painting had always seemed out of place, its turbulent waves and dark skies a stark contrast to the warmth of the cottage. Now, however, something about it felt intentional. She ran her fingers along the frame, searching for anything unusual. Her fingertips brushed against a small, almost invisible latch on the side. Heart racing, she pressed it, and the painting swung forward like a door. Behind it was a small compartment, just big enough for a lock. Her breath caught as she pulled the key from her pocket, its ornate design a perfect match for the lock inside. Her hands trembled as she inserted the key and turned it. The mechanism clicked and the compartment opened to reveal a single item, a journal, its leather cover embossed with the same wave and star designs as the chest she'd found earlier. She opened it, her grandmother's handwriting filling the pages. The first entry read, "For Maya, my light in the storm. This journal holds my journey, my truths, and the path I couldn't finish alone. The answers you seek are within." Maya sank into the armchair, the journal heavy in her hands. Whatever this was, it was more than a treasure hunt. It was her grandmother's legacy, and now it was hers to uncover. Maya turned the first page of the journal, her heart pounding in her chest. Her grandmother's familiar handwriting stretched across the lined pages, looping elegantly as if Edith had written each word with care and intention. Maya, The first entry began. If you're reading this, it means you've taken the first steps of a journey I always hoped you'd begin. It's a path I walked alone for much of my life, but I know now it wasn't meant to end with me. Maya's fingers tightened on the edge of the page. This wasn't just a journal, it was a conversation across time, a connection to Edith's innermost thoughts. She continued reading. The map I left you is more than paper. It's a guide to places and truths I discovered, pieces of a puzzle that lead to something greater. You've already found the key. Good. That was the hardest part to retrieve. The next step will take you somewhere familiar, but the way forward will require courage. Familiar? Maya frowned. Her grandmother's house already felt steeped in familiarity, yet Edith's words suggested more. What else could this place be hiding? Turning the page, Maya saw a drawing sketched in the journal, a delicate rendering of the garden behind the cottage. Her eyes fell on a specific area near the old oak tree, marked with an X. Beneath it, Edith had written, "The answers lie where the roots are deepest." The garden was bathed in golden light when Maya stepped outside, the air fragrant with lavender and rosemary. She clutched the journal to her chest, her eyes scanning the familiar landscape. The oak tree stood tall and resolute, its branches swaying gently in the breeze. Maya had spent countless afternoons here as a child, lying beneath the tree's canopy while Edith read stories aloud. Now the sight of it brought a bittersweet pang. She approached the tree cautiously, as though disturbing its quiet strength would unravel the memories bound to it. At the base of the tree, she knelt, running her fingers through the cool soil. There was nothing obvious, no marker or sign to indicate what her grandmother had meant. Frustrated, she sat back on her heels, letting out a long sigh. "Come on, Grandma," she muttered, glancing at the journal in her lap. "What am I supposed to be looking for?" Her fingers traced the X on the sketch again. Something about it felt deliberate, almost too perfect. Then it hit her. She wasn't looking for something on the surface. She needed to dig deeper. Armed with a small trowel she found in the shed, Maya began to dig near the roots of the oak tree. The earth was dense but pliable, the scent of damp soil rising as she worked. Minutes passed, her muscles straining, until the trowel struck something solid. Her breath caught as she unearthed a small wooden box, its edges worn smooth by time. She lifted it carefully, brushing away the dirt. The box wasn't locked, and as she opened it, she found a folded piece of paper and a delicate necklace with a pendant shaped like a star. The paper was yellowed with age, and as she unfolded it, she saw a map. This one more detailed than the one Edith had left before. It was marked with another set of coordinates and a single line of text. The heart of the journey begins where the waters converge. Maya sat beneath the oak tree, the map and necklace resting in her lap. The pendant glinted in the fading sunlight, its intricate design catching her eye. She turned it over, noticing an engraving on the back, "To Edith, with love." Her chest tightened. Was this a gift from her grandfather? Maya had never met him. He had passed away long before she was born. Her grandmother rarely spoke of him, and when she did, there was always a wistfulness in her tone, a sense of loss that never quite healed. The coordinates on the new map pointed to a location outside of Havenmore, near the edge of the county. The phrase, "where the waters converge," brought to mind the place where two rivers met, a spot her grandmother had taken her to once when she was young. It was secluded and serene, surrounded by wildflowers and willow trees. Maya stood, her resolve strengthening. If Edith's journey had started there, then hers would too. She slipped the necklace around her neck, the cool metal resting just above her heart, and tucked the map into her jacket. The drive to the riverside was long and winding, the sun dipping below the horizon as twilight set in. Maya's headlights illuminated the narrow road, the surrounding woods casting long shadows. She felt a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. What would she find there? When she finally arrived, the air was thick with the hum of insects and the distant rush of water. She stepped out of the car, the scent of damp earth and blooming wildflowers washing over her. The riverside hadn't changed much since she'd last seen it. The same willow trees swayed in the breeze, their branches dipping into the water like fingers. The map led her to a small clearing, where the two rivers merged, Maya's footsteps faltered as she saw a stone bench at the center of the clearing, engraved with the same wave and star design that adorned the chest and journal. She approached it slowly, her heart pounding. On the bench was a leather satchel, weathered but intact. Inside, she found a bundle of letters tied with twine, each one addressed to her grandmother. Maya's hands shook as she untied the bundle and unfolded the first letter. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the words struck her like a bolt of lightning. "My dearest Edith," it began, "though the miles between us are great, my heart remains with you always. Every night I look to the stars and think of you. I hope someday you'll find these letters and know the depth of my love." Her eyes filled with tears as she read, realizing these letters were from her grandfather. They told the story of a love that had endured distance and time, of promises made and kept. Beneath the letters was a final note, written in Edith's hand. "Maya, love is the thread that weaves through all things. It is the map, the key, and the treasure itself. Keep going, and you'll see what I mean." Maya clutched the satchel to her chest, the weight of her grandmother's words settling over her. She didn't know what awaited her at the end of this journey, but for the first time, she felt certain of one thing. She wasn't walking this path alone. Maya stayed at the riverside long after the sky had turned a deep indigo, the stars reflecting in the calm water like scattered diamonds. The bundle of letters rested in her lap, their fragile pages radiating the weight of decades-long secrets. Each letter was a window into a love story she had never known, a love so profound that it spilled onto the page with an aching beauty. Her grandfather, Richard, had been a traveling artist, much like herself in many ways. His words spoke of longing, of dreams shared and dashed, of sacrifices made for reasons Maya could only guess. But in every line, there was a promise that, no matter what, his love for Edith would endure. Maya clutched the necklace hanging around her neck. The engraving on the back had seemed like a simple sentiment at first, but now it felt like an anchor to the story unfolding before her. She thought of Edith's quiet strength, the way she had carried on after Richard's passing. How much had her grandmother sacrificed? How much of her own heart had she given away to preserve the legacy of love she was now passing down to Maya? Among the letters, Maya found one addressed to her. Her breath hitched as she opened it. The handwriting was Edith's, steady and sure. "Maya," it began, "I know you've found the letters. I wanted you to understand something fundamental before you take the next step. Your grandfather and I didn't just love each other. We fought for that love. We weathered storms, faced rejection, and built something strong from the fragile threads of hope. I see so much of him in you. The way you create, the way you dream. But I also see the fear you carry, the way you hold yourself back. You've been hurt, and I understand that pain all too well. This journey isn't just about uncovering the past, it's about finding the courage to let go of what holds you back. The next step is yours to take." Maya wiped away tears, her grandmother's words hitting a tender spot she hadn't acknowledged in years. She folded the letter carefully and slipped it into her jacket pocket, the weight of it comforting. The next morning, Maya awoke with a renewed sense of purpose. She spread the map across the small dining table in Edith's cottage, tracing the coordinates with her finger. The next location was a town several hours away, a place Maya had never been. She packed quickly, making sure the journal, letters, and necklace were all tucked safely into her bag. As she started the car and pulled onto the main road, she couldn't help but feel like she was chasing shadows, but for the first time, the chase felt meaningful. The town of Eldermere was quaint and unassuming, its cobblestone streets lined with antique shops and cozy cafes. Maya followed the map to a small gallery tucked away on a quiet street. The building was modest, its sign reading, "Eldermere Art Collective." Inside, the gallery was a treasure trove of history and creativity. Paintings lined the walls, sculptures stood on pedestals, and the faint smell of oil paint and varnish hung in the air. Maya wandered through the space, her eyes scanning for anything that might connect to Edith's map. It wasn't until she reached a back room that she found it, a painting of a riverside scene, almost identical to the one she had visited the night before. In the bottom corner of the canvas was a signature, Richard L., her grandfather's painting. Maya's breath caught as she stared at the piece, the vibrant brushstrokes capturing the serenity of the riverside with stunning clarity. She felt as though she were standing in his footsteps, seeing the world through his eyes. "Beautiful, isn't it?" a voice said from behind her. Maya turned to see an older man with silver hair and kind eyes. He wore a paint-stained smock and carried a palette in one hand. "It's one of my favorites," he continued, gesturing toward the painting. "Richard was a remarkable artist. He exhibited here many times." "You knew him?" Maya asked, her voice trembling. The man nodded. "Not well, but enough to know he had a gift and a great love for someone. He used to talk about her while he worked, always with a kind of reverence that made you feel it wasn't just love, it was his whole world." Maya swallowed hard, her emotions threatening to spill over. "That someone was my grandmother," she said softly. The man's eyes lit up with recognition. "Edith, of course. You must be Maya. I remember Richard mentioning your name once. He said if you were anything like Edith, the world would be a better place." The words hit her like a tidal wave, and she fought back tears. "Did he ever leave anything here? Anything personal?" The man thought for a moment before nodding. "As a matter of fact, he did. A small box, said it was meant for someone important. Wait here." Minutes later, Maya sat in the gallery's quiet corner, the small wooden box resting in her lap. She opened it carefully, revealing a stack of sketches, a photograph, and a sealed envelope. The sketches were breathtaking. Images of Edith, the riverside, and a young girl who could only be Maya. She flipped through them slowly, each piece a testament to Richard's love and longing. The photograph was black and white, capturing Richard and Edith standing by the oak tree. They were young, their smiles radiant, their hands clasped tightly. Finally, Maya opened the envelope. Inside was another letter, written in Richard's hand. "To my dearest Edith and our beloved Maya, if this box finds you, know that it carries my heart. Every sketch, every line, is a piece of my soul that I hope will bridge the distance between us. Maya, you are the legacy of our love. Carry it forward with courage, and know that wherever you go, you are never alone. All my love, Richard." Tears streamed down Maya's face as she held the letter close. In that moment, she felt the weight of her grandparents' love, its endurance, its depth, and its power to heal even across generations. She left the gallery that day with the box in hand, her heart fuller than it had been in years. The journey wasn't over, but she knew now that it wasn't just Edith or Richard guiding her. Their love had lit the way, and it was up to her to carry the flame forward. If you like this story, be sure to give it a thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow. And if you enjoy stories that embraces your heart, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one. Let me know in the comments what stood out to you the most. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.